My name is Aver, I'm 28, and for a long time I believed I was living the kind of love story people post about with glittery captions and too many heart emojis. I met Ethan on a rainy Thursday when the city bus broke down and everyone scattered for rides. He offered me his umbrella, then walked me 3 blocks out of his way because my heels were sinking into wet pavement. He was thoughtful, a little awkward, and disarmingly sincere. By the time the clouds lifted, I was already curious about him. By our 3rd date, I was halfway in love. Ethan wasn't flashy. He showed up on time with flowers he said looked like sunlight and the kind of attention that made me feel like there was no one else in the room. He remembered small things. The pastry I always split in half and ate from the middle. The way I tuck my hair behind my ear when I'm trying not to cry. He called his mother every Sunday. He volunteered at a weekend clinic. He listened. 2 years later, under twinkle lights behind my favorite bookstore, he asked me to marry him with hands that shook like he was holding something fragile and holy. I said yes before he finished the question. The months that followed were a blur of lists and laughter. We toured venues and taste-tested cakes until our tongues went numb. We argued softly about napkin colors and agreed emphatically about the band. My best friend Maya became the project manager I didn't know I needed. My mom cried happy tears in every bridal boutique within 15 miles. We booked a small stone chapel with stained glass that set the pews on fire with color each afternoon. We chose vows we wrote ourselves. We picked a first dance that felt like a secret language only we spoke. When the invitations went out, it felt official. Our lives were about to braid into one. There's a certain glow that follows a bride-to-be, or maybe I just imagined it. I remember standing in front of the mirror at my final dress fitting, fingers skimming the lace, thinking, this is the best decision I've ever made. The dress hugged where it should, softened where it needed to, and when I turned, the train whispered across the floor like a promise. On the last week before the wedding, the house became a staging area. Boxers labeled, place cards, candles, emergency kit. I arranged escort cards on the dining table while Ethan practiced a speech he wouldn't let me eat. He kissed my forehead and said, you'll love it. It's us. The night before the rehearsal, my dad took me out for pie and advice. He told me marriage is less about grand gestures and more about showing up on boring Tuesdays. I said I'd marry Ethan on a Tuesday in a grocery store aisle with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, if that's what it took. I meant it. There were tiny nerves, of course. I chalked them up to logistics. The florist delayed a shipment. The ring bearer had the flu. The hotel lost 2 room blocks and then miraculously found them again. Every wedding has chaos. Ours felt blessed anyway. On the morning of the rehearsal, I woke to sunlight across the sheets and a text from Ethan, 24 hours. I can't wait to see you walk toward me. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, smiled until my cheeks hurt, and texted back a selfie with my veil draped over pajamas. He replied with a string of heart emojis and a promise to pick up the programs. If there were storms on the horizon, I didn't see them. I only saw blue. The rehearsal itself felt like playing pretend, like trying on the future for size. We lined up, we walked, we laughed when my maid of honor tripped over the aisle runner and turned it into a curtsy. The coordinator clicked a pen and said, again, from the top. And we did, giddy and a little dizzy with it all. That night, I packed the bridal suite bag carefully. Lipstick, tissues, a lucky coin my grandmother pressed into my palm, and a note for Ethan I'd asked Maya to deliver before the ceremony. It said, see you at the end of the aisle. I choose you. If I had known what was coming, I would have written something else. Or maybe I wouldn't have written anything at all. I fell asleep to the sound of my mother humming in the kitchen and woke to a Saturday that felt like a prayer. It was finally here, the day we'd promised, the day we'd planned, the day that would change everything. I just didn't know how. Weddings are supposed to be stressful. That's what everyone kept telling me. Cold feet, nerves, jitters, it's normal, they said. So whenever I noticed something off about Ethan, I convinced myself it was just the pressure of the big day. It started with his phone. Ethan had never been secretive before. We'd shared playlists, grocery lists, even silly passwords we swore we'd change later. But suddenly, he started keeping his phone face down on the table. At night, he'd take it into the bathroom when he showered. Once, during dinner, it buzzed, and he shoved it in his pocket so quickly that his fork clattered against the plate. I raised an eyebrow. Who was that? Work, he muttered, chewing fast, eyes on his plate. I wanted to believe him. I did. But who texts you 3 times in a row at 8:30 p.m. about accounting spreadsheets? Then came the disappearances. He'd run errands and come back later than expected. The line at the printer was insane. he said, when he took 2 hours to pick up our programs. Another time, he claimed traffic, but I had driven the same route. 15 minutes later, it was clear. When I mentioned it to Maya, she squeezed my hand and said, "Girl, it's nerves." He probably just needed space to breathe. Grooms freak out too, you know. I laughed weakly and nodded. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just hyper. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I padded into the kitchen for tea, only to find Ethan already there, hunched over the counter with his phone glowing in the dark. He jumped when he saw me, nearly spilling his mug. "Babe, you scared me," he said, fumbling to lock the screen. I forced a smile. "Couldn't sleep either." He nodded quickly. "Just going over some last-minute details with the best man," but the way his shoulders tensed told me it wasn't the best man he was texting. Even little things about his demeanor shifted. Ethan was usually affectionate, always brushing my hair back, pressing quick kisses to my temple, whispering stupid jokes in my ear. But that week his touch grew distracted. He'd hold my hand, but glance at his watch. He'd kiss me, but pull away faster than usual, like his mind was already elsewhere. When I asked if everything was okay, he smiled too quickly. "Of course, I just want everything to be perfect for you." It should have melted my heart. Instead, it chilled me. On the morning of the wedding, I tried to push the doubts away. My dress was hanging by the window, glowing in the light like spun sugar. My bridesmaids buzzed around with curling irons and champagne glasses. Laughter filled the suite. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But in the quiet moments, when I caught my reflection alone in the mirror, I saw something in my own eyes I couldn't explain. Unease. During hair and makeup, Maya handed me a small note. "From Ethan," she said with a grin. I unfolded it eagerly, hoping it would wash away my doubts. "Can't wait to see you at the altar. You're my forever." Sweet, simple, exactly what I expected. So why did it feel rehearsed, like a line borrowed from a greeting card? At the chapel, the world blurred into motion. Guests arriving in clusters, flowers being adjusted, my mother dabbing her eyes with tissue. The coordinator clipped a headset mic and whispered checklists. Everyone seemed to orbit around me like I was the center of some beautiful, chaotic universe. And yet, beneath the lace and perfume and violin strings, that knowing feeling pulsed stronger than ever. Something was wrong. As the bridal party lined up, I stood at the heavy wooden doors, bouquet trembling slightly in my hands. The organist played the opening chords of our chosen song. The crowd hushed on the other side of the doors. My father squeezed my arm, whispering, "Ready, kiddo?" I nodded. At least, I think I did. Because just then, my clutch buzzed, one vibration, then another. I frowned, slipping it open for one last glance before I silenced it. And that's when I saw the message. The phone buzzed again in my hand, louder than the organ, louder than the hushed whispers of 100 guests waiting inside. My father shifted beside me, oblivious, tugging at his cufflinks. "We're up any second now," he murmured. But the screen burned against my palm. A single notification. A name I didn't recognize. "You deserve to know the truth before you say, 'I do.' Check the photos." My stomach lurched. My first instinct was to slip the phone back into my clutch, pretend it never happened, and walk forward into the life I'd built for months, years. But my thumb hovered, traitorous, until the screen unlocked. There they were. Photos, my own. Not at a bachelor party, not at a work event, but pressed against another woman in a dim bar. His hands at her waist, his lips grazing her cheek. In another shot, they sat in a booth, her head on his shoulder, his smile wide, carefree. The timestamps told the rest of the story. Just last week, just days before our wedding. The bouquet slipped in my grip. My pulse thundered. "Sweetheart," my father asked, noticing the blood drain from my face. I snapped the clutch shut. 1 second. I stumbled toward the side alcove of the chapel, away from the expectant crowd, away from the weight of the music. My bridesmaids peeked after me in confusion, but I waved them off. I needed air. I needed silence. Leaning against the cool stone wall, I scrolled through the rest. More photos. A receipt from a hotel bar. A text exchange captured in screenshots. Her. "Can't believe you're still going through with it." Ethan. "I have two. Too late to stop now, her. But what about us?" Ethan. "We'll figure it out." My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't nerves. This wasn't cold feet. This was betrayal documented. Undeniable. A knock at the alcove door jolted me. It was Maya, peeking in with her veil slightly crooked. "Eva, what's wrong?" "They're about to start the music again. Everyone's waiting." I shoved the phone toward her. She scanned the screen, color draining from her face. "Oh my God," she whispered. "This is Ava. This is real." Tears burned my eyes, threatening to ruin the makeup carefully painted an hour ago. "What do I do?" Maya bit her lip, torn. "You can still go through with it. Pretend none of this exists. Smile for the cameras. Or," she hesitated, "or you can stop it. Right now." The word hung between us like a guillotine. Stop. I thought of my mother in the front row, tissues ready for happy tears. I thought of the thousands we'd spent, the guests who had flown across the country, the honeymoon booked and waiting. I thought of the vows in my purse, words I'd poured from my soul onto paper. And I thought of Ethan's smile in those photos, not the smile he gave me, but the one he gave her. The organ swelled again, louder now, the cue for the doors to open. My father's voice called softly, "Ava, it's time." Maya squeezed my hands. "It's your choice. But whatever you do, make sure it's yours, not anyone else's." I wiped my cheeks, steadied my breath, and looked at the phone one last time. The final photo was the worst. Ethan in his car, shirt half unbuttoned, the woman kissing his jawline, his hand on her thigh, the timestamp, 11:47 p.m. 2 nights ago. The night he told me he was at the hotel finalizing guest accommodations. The night he texted me, "Miss you," dreaming of tomorrow. My knees nearly buckled. Outside, the guests were already rising, waiting for my entrance. My father held the bouquet I'd dropped, smiling expectantly. He didn't know. None of them did. And I realized in that moment I had the power to change the story right here, right now. I could walk through those doors and live a lie that would suffocate me for years. Or I could stop it, the fairy tale veil away before it swallowed me whole. The music swelled, the doors cracked open, and everyone turned toward the aisle. But I didn't move. I stood in the alcove while the doors breathed open an inch. Then two lights spilled across the threshold like a promise I could no longer keep. The organist held the first chord, waiting for my steps, for a choreography written months ago. I didn't move. My father turned puzzled. "Ava," he whispered, lifting the bouquet. His eyes softened. That familiar "you've got this" look he'd been giving me since kindergarten recitals. "Dad," I managed, voice splintering. "I can't." He blinked once, twice. Then he stepped toward me, shutting the doors gently with his free hand. The music dipped to a polite murmur behind the wood. "What happened?" I handed him my phone. His mouth pressed into a line as he scrolled photos, timestamps, the chat. I watched time rearrange his face. Confusion, refusal, recognition, rage. When he looked up, the softness was gone. "You don't have to walk down that aisle," he said, steady as bedrock. "Not today. Not ever, if you don't want to." The coordinator hustled over, headset crackling, smile liquid on. "We're ready for you," she staged whispered. "We're live?" I breathed in the lace at my ribs, suddenly too tight. "We're not," I said. "Not yet." Behind us, the guests rustled like wind through a field. Somewhere, a baby. Somewhere, Maya was surely bargaining with the coordinator in rapid-fire whispers. But there was one person I needed to see before I could decide. The man at the other end of the aisle. "Dad," I said, placing the bouquet back in his hands. "Can you bring Ethan here alone?" His jaw set. He didn't ask questions. "Maya," he called softly, and somehow she appeared, eyes already wet. He put the bouquet in her hands. "Guard this door." Then he slipped inside the chapel like a secret. Minutes stretched. I studied the dust floating in the shaft of stained glass light, each fleck a tiny universe. My palms were cold. My mind was loud. Choose, choose, choose. Footsteps approached. The door opened just enough for Ethan to slip into the alcove. He looked beautiful in the cruel way of heartbreak tie. Perfect. Hair just messy enough. The face I thought I'd love across decades. "Ava," he began, voice a relief and a knife. I held up the phone. "Before you say anything, look." He glanced, winced, closed his eyes. "Who sent?" "It doesn't matter who sent them," I said, calm in a way that frightened me. "Tell me what I'm looking at." He swallowed. "A mistake." I laughed, the sound small and sharp. "A mistake with a mistake with chat logs. A mistake with a hotel receipt and a hand on someone else's thigh." He reached for me. I stepped back. The train whispered against stone. "Ava, I panicked," he said softly. "The wedding got big, everything got loud, and I got stupid." It meant nothing. Then why did it keep happening? I asked. "Why is there a photo from 2 nights ago?" Silence. The organist started playing something else filler music, the kind they use when the bride is repinned or a heel breaks. How do you announce that a heart broke instead? Ethan dragged a hand down his face. I don't have a good answer, he said. I wish I did. I love you. I want to marry you. I never stopped wanting that. You wanted both, I said. The story and the secret, the vows and the loophole. He flinched, then tried a different door. If we walk out there, we can start over. Please, we'll go to therapy. I'll cut off contact. You already cut something, I said. You cut the part of me that trusts you. Behind us, a muffled cough from the coordinator. Beyond, 100 held breaths. I pictured my mother in the front row, clutching tissues like life. I pictured the honeymoon tickets, the hotel blocks, the cake tiers waiting in a reception hall that smelled like peonies and possibility. I also pictured my future Tuesdays on a couch, wondering where he was. Wedding anniversaries with a second shadow in every room. Fights that began with, who was that? Andar with you promised. Look at me, I said. He did. If I walk down that aisle today, it won't be toward a partner. It'll be toward a problem I'm too afraid to name. His eyes glossed. Ava, please. If you love me, I do, I said. But I love myself enough not to hand my life to someone who's already borrowed parts of it. The words hung there, shocking both of us with their clarity. For the first time all morning, the tight band around my chest loosened a notch. He nodded, small and broken. So, what do we do? I looked at the doors, at the light bleeding around their edges, at a future that could split here like a road through woods. We tell the truth, I said. He closed his eyes. Out there. Out there, I said. They came for a wedding. They will leave with a story. Let it be the right one. He shook his head, panic sparking. Ava, don't humiliate me. I almost smiled at the irony. This isn't about humiliation. It's about letting people who love us stop planning their lives around a lie. The door cracked. Maya's face appeared, brave and quivering. Whatever you choose, she whispered, we've got you. I took her hand, squeezed. Then I turned to Ethan. You can stand with me, I said. Or you can let me do it alone. He stared at the floor for a long breath, then nodded once. I'll stand with you. We stepped into the chapel together, not as bride and groom, but as two people about to detonate a fantasy. The music faltered, then faded. 100 faces turned, confusion rippling through pews like wind through grass. I stopped at the aisle's mouth. Ethan stood beside me, palms open, eyes wet. My father and mother rose in the front row. My mother's lips formed a question. My father's jaw set like granite. I took the mic from the bewildered. My voice echoed against stone and glass. Thank you for being here, I began, and my hands stopped shaking. You came to celebrate our love. That love is real, what we built the years. We shared the version of us that brought us to this room. But love can't survive where trust has died. A murmur? A rustle? Someone gasped. Maya pressed her knuckles to her mouth. I continued. A few minutes ago, I learned something I can't unlearn. I won't share the details. I don't need to. What matters is that I can't make vows I know I'll resent keeping. I turned to Ethan. He nodded, voice raw. I heard her, he said into the mic. I'm sorry. This is my fault. Silence expanded, then on the back pew, a woman dabbed her eyes. In the middle rows, someone placed a hand over their heart. I handed the mic back. We're calling off the ceremony, I said. Please join us for food next door. If you'd like to show us kindness today, we could both use it. But there won't be a wedding. I slipped the bouquet to Maya, who held it like a flag in a farewell. My mother's face broke and mended in the space of a breath. My father's eyes shone with pride I hadn't expected. The coordinator went pale, then professional. The organist found a gentle hymn without words. Ethan touched my elbow. A question. I shook my head. I need a minute, I whispered. I walked back up the aisle alone, past faces I loved and faces I barely knew. Past the pew where, an hour from now, children would swing their feet and ask about cake. The doors opened to daylight. Air met me like water after a long dive. Outside, I leaned against the cool stone and finally let myself cry not the quiet leak of a single tear, but the messy, cathartic storm a person earns when she chooses truth over a pretty lie. When the sobs ebbed, I felt lighter, not happy, not yet, but honest. And sometimes honesty is the first oxygen after a room full of smoke. I took off my veil, folded it carefully, and handed it to Maya when she appeared at my side. Keep it, I said. For the next time, I mean every word, she nodded, eyes fierce. You already do. The chapel emptied slowly, like a balloon leaking air, guests whispered as they left, some glancing at me with pity, some with respect. My mother wrapped her arms around me, mascara smudged from tears she hadn't planned on crying. "You're brave," she whispered, "braver than I ever was at your age." My father stood behind her, jaw tight, but when our eyes met, he gave me a single, steady nod. The kind of nod that says, "You did the right thing, even if it hurts." Ethan stayed behind, surrounded by groomsmen who didn't know whether to console him or scold him. He tried to catch my eye, but I couldn't. Not then. Not with the betrayal still ringing louder than the organ had minutes earlier. Maya, fierce and loyal, became my shield. She ushered people out, intercepted questions, and finally handed me a glass of water like it was medicine. "Drink," she said, her voice trembling but firm. When the last guest left, I sat alone in the bridal suite, staring at the dress crumpled across the chair. Hours ago, it had been a symbol of everything I dreamed of. Now, it felt like evidence of a crime scene. That night, instead of boarding a honeymoon flight, I crawled into bed at my parents' house. My mother laid a blanket over me like I was 12 again. My father checked the locks twice. I cried until sleep took me. Not from regret, but from exhaustion. Because ending a wedding isn't just ending a ceremony. It's ending an entire imagined future. The days after blurred, vendors called about invoices. Guests texted condolences. Social media flooded with speculation. I stayed quiet. The story wasn't theirs to dissect. Ethan reached out, of course, messages, calls, even a letter slipped under my parents' door. Words full of apologies, promises, excuses. He said he still loved me, that he could change, that what we had was worth saving. But each shimmy, I saw the photos, the chat, the time-stamped proof, and I remembered how it felt to stand at the edge of that aisle, bouquet shaking in my hands, knowing the truth. Love without trust isn't love. It's theater. Weeks passed. Slowly, I started to feel lighter. I went back to work, back to yoga classes, back to brunches with Maya where we laughed until our ribs hurt. People whispered, of course, they always do. But when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who chose honesty over illusion. And that made me proud. The dress is still in the back of my closet. Some days I think I should sell it. Other days I think I should burn it. For now, it's Dysolent, a reminder of the day I chose myself. I don't know if Ethan will ever truly understand the depth of what he broke. Maybe he'll keep chasing easy distractions. Maybe he'll learn, too late, that love is the one thing you can't fake. What I do know is this. I walked away before the vows chained me to a life built on lies. And that, in its own twisted way, was the happiest ending I could give myself. So let me ask you, if you were standing at the chapel doors, about to walk towards someone you loved, and discovered proof of their betrayal, would you keep walking? Or would you stop everything like I did?